Have you ever looked into a stranger's eyes and suddenly seen your own fear staring back at you? This video is the story of the moment that happened to me in Denmark. A day that seemed ordinary but revealed a truth I had been running from for years. And if you're tired, discouraged, or feel like giving up on yourself, then maybe this journey will make you pause and look deeper. The eyes that shook me. Imagine walking through a quiet street in Denmark, the kind that looks like it was painted by a calm-hearted artist. Soft light, clean air, little whispers of wind brushing past old brick walls. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, your whole world tilts because a stranger looks at you for half a second longer than normal. That was me. And that half second felt like someone had quietly opened a door inside my chest and turned on the light I'd been avoiding for years. It wasn't a dramatic stare. Not intense. Not judgmental. Just honest. Too honest. The kind of honesty that doesn't try to say anything, but somehow still says everything you secretly hope no one will ever notice about you. There's something bizarre about how silence works in Denmark, how it makes even the smallest moment feel louder. That day, in that silence, the truth in his eyes hit me so clearly it almost felt staged. You know that weird sensation when your brain freezes like an outdated computer, spinning that little loading circle because it doesn't want to deal with something? That was my entire system. My body kept walking, but inside everything stopped. Because it wasn't him I was seeing. It was the version of myself I had been pretending not to see. The tired one. The worn-out one. The one who kept saying I'm fine, even while quietly falling apart. Sometimes your mind hides things from you the same way a child hides a broken toy, behind its back, hoping no one notices. But all it takes is one unexpected angle of sunlight, or one stranger's expression, and suddenly the truth peeks out. Maybe the universe is petty like that. Maybe it enjoys dropping emotional plot twists when you least expect them. Or maybe it's just that we only truly see ourselves when we're far from home, with no familiar noise to drown out the thoughts we've been muting. I remember slowing down, pretending to check my phone just to escape the intensity of that feeling. But you can't really outrun a reflection if it's coming from the inside. My chest felt tight in that subtle way, like the body is whispering, "Hey, you might want to deal with this." And honestly, I hated how accurate that whisper was. But the strangest thing, even though I felt exposed, I also felt relieved. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't lying to myself. Not in that moment, and I didn't know it yet. But that tiny eye contact was about to lead me into a journey I had avoided for years. A journey where every quiet street, every small conversation, and every moment of stillness in Denmark would peel back another layer of truth. A strange silence in Denmark. There's a certain kind of silence in Denmark that doesn't feel empty at all. It feels intentional. Like the whole country is taking a slow, steady breath while you're still gasping for air. When I first arrived, that silence confused me. Back home, noise fills every crack in the day. But in Denmark, the quiet feels like a mirror, reflecting every thought you try to hide from yourself. And honestly, that can be terrifying when your inner world is louder than a crowded street. I remember standing at a bus stop in Aarhus, surrounded by people who weren't talking, weren't rushing, weren't panicking, just existing calmly, like their minds were floating somewhere above the ground. Meanwhile, my brain was sprinting like a nervous intern trying to impress a boss that didn't even know they existed. It's funny how peace can feel so uncomfortable when you're not used to it. Sometimes silence doesn't calm you. It exposes you. The first few days, every quiet moment felt like an ambush. My thoughts showed up one by one like old friends who wanted to check in. But you know they're only there to stir trouble. I'd catch myself staring out the train window, pretending to admire the scenery, when in reality I was avoiding the heavy feeling rising in my chest. It's strange, Denmark didn't overwhelm me with noise but with the lack of it. It felt like someone had pressed pause on the world and said, "Okay, now listen. Really listen." And the weirdest part? My body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders would tense, my breathing would shorten, my stomach would twist slightly, not from fear of the country, but from fear of what the silence was slowly uncovering. It was almost like Denmark was holding up a spotlight, showing me emotions I had tucked away in the dusty attic of my life. Turns out, quiet places are terrible for emotional hiding point. One afternoon, I sat by the harbor watching boats float peacefully, and a strange thought hit me. Maybe the silence wasn't the problem. Maybe I was the one carrying too much noise inside. You know that feeling when your mind is so crowded that even calmness becomes uncomfortable? That was me. Denmark wasn't judging me. It was simply giving me space. Space I didn't know how to sit with. And that space, unexpected, unwelcome, unavoidable, was the beginning of a truth I wasn't ready to face yet. A truth that would keep following me through every quiet street and gentle sunset in this cold, beautiful country. Lost in a beautiful country. There's a special kind of panic that only happens when you realize you're lost in a place that's too beautiful to be helpful. That was me in Aarhus. Hands cold, phone at 12%, Google Maps spinning like it was dizzy, and the sky turning that soft Scandinavian blue that makes everything look peaceful, except your brain. My surroundings were stunning. Old buildings, quiet streets, a gentle scent of rain in the air. Yet inside me, pure chaos. It's ironic how beauty doesn't always calm you. Sometimes it just highlights how unsettled you truly are. I remember turning a corner and suddenly realizing nothing looked familiar. Not the street, not the people, not even the way the air felt. And for a moment the world felt too big and I felt too small. It hit me that being lost in a foreign country isn't really about directions. It's about the tiny fear that you're not as strong or put together as you pretend to be. Funny how a simple wrong turn can expose the emotional GPS you've been ignoring. As I walked, my mind kept replaying the look in that stranger's eyes from earlier, like a looping video clip. It followed me down the street, sitting quietly in the back of my thoughts. The more lost I became physically, the more I felt lost internally. There's something deeply uncomfortable about realizing the road beneath your feet and the road inside your chest both feel uncertain at the same time. Then it happened, a small moment but one that felt strangely significant. A woman walked past me pushing a bicycle, her blonde hair tied loosely, her scarf fluttering in the wind. She glanced at me with a softness that felt almost cinematic, like she instantly knew I wasn't just lost on the map. For a second, her expression held the same quiet honesty I had seen earlier. And that scared me more than being lost. Why does it feel like strangers can see us more clearly than we see ourselves? Maybe because we're too busy performing, pretending, polishing our outside to notice the cracks forming inside. She smiled with that gentle Danish kindness, calm, warm, and non-intrusive, and somehow that made the truth sting even more. I wasn't okay. I hadn't been for a while. I kept walking until I reached a small bridge over a canal. The water below was still, reflecting the sky like a giant mirror. And for a second I couldn't tell if it was the city or my own feelings that felt so eerily quiet. That's when it hit me. I wasn't afraid of being lost in Aarhus. I was afraid of being lost in myself. And in that moment, Denmark wasn't just a country, it was a reminder. A reminder that sometimes you have to lose your way outside to finally see what's happening inside. The fear beneath my smile. There's a strange talent many of us develop without ever practicing it. The ability to smile while quietly falling apart. Denmark taught me that I was extremely good at it. On the outside, I looked calm, polite, maybe even a little curious, like any traveler trying to blend into a new culture. But underneath that carefully arranged expression, a tightness in my chest that never fully went away. A quiet panic wrapped in a friendly face. One afternoon in Aarhus, I was standing in line at a small bakery, surrounded by the warm smell of cinnamon and fresh bread. Everything looked peaceful. Soft music, slow conversations, people moving with that effortless Scandinavian ease. I forced a smile, hoping it would camouflage the storm inside me. But smiles are funny. They hide nothing from the people who know how to look. And the cashier, a young guy with gentle eyes, looked at me in a way that made my heart drop. Not judging, not curious, but aware that it's unsettling when someone sees the version of you that you've been trying to bury under routines, distractions, and busyness. His eyes lingered just a moment longer than necessary, and suddenly the bakery felt too warm, too bright, too honest. I felt exposed, like someone had pulled away the curtain I'd been hiding behind. And all I could think was, please don't see through me. Not today. The truth is, fear rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up as little habits. The way you laugh too quickly, the way you avoid eye contact, the way you talk just enough to seem fine but never enough to be understood. My smile had become a shield, one I carried everywhere, especially when I didn't know how to exist in a place that felt calmer than my own mind. The psychology behind this is simple but painful. When your inner world feels chaotic, you cling to anything that looks stable, even a smile. The brain hates vulnerability, so it performs confidence like a rehearsed script. But in Denmark, where people don't rush to fill silence and aren't afraid of sincerity, my script fell apart as I took the warm pastry from the cashier. My hand trembled slightly. Not from the cold, but from the terrifying realization that someone had seen the fear behind my smile. And maybe it was time I stopped hiding from it too. A coffee shop revelation. There's something almost theatrical about Copenhagen in the early morning. The soft gray light, the quiet streets, the way the city feels half awake but fully alive. That morning I stepped into a small coffee shop tucked between two narrow buildings, hoping caffeine would fix the heaviness I'd been carrying. Spoiler, it didn't. But something else did. Just not in the way I expected. The place was warm, dim, cozy, the kind of cafe where time feels slower, almost forgiving. I ordered a latte and sat near the window, pretending to read emails while actually avoiding my own thoughts. You know that classic trick. Look busy so your feelings don't think they're invited. But Denmark has a peculiar way of disarming you. Maybe it's the calmness. Maybe it's the honesty in the air. Or maybe it was the barista that morning. The woman with soft brown eyes who noticed things she wasn't supposed to notice. I'd been staring at my coffee for so long the foam started collapsing. And that's when she approached. Not in a dramatic movie-style moment, just a quiet, gentle step toward my table. "Are you okay?" she asked. 3 simple words. Not heavy, not intrusive. Yet they hit me harder than any emotional confession I'd ever avoided, and my first instinct was the usual performance. Smile, nod, lie politely. But something about the way she looked at me, steady, patient, undeniably genuine, made the lie stick in my throat. It's strange how a stranger's sincerity can feel more intimate than a friend's concern. My voice cracked when I tried to answer, and she immediately softened, as if she'd expected it. "You look like someone carrying too much," she said quietly. And there it was, the truth I couldn't outrun. Not because she forced it out of me, but because she recognized it. Humans can sense emotional weight the same way we sense a storm in the air. Her observation wasn't dramatic, but it was precise. Like she'd held up a mirror I'd been avoiding, sitting there, surrounded by the smell of coffee and the soft hum of Danish conversations. I felt something shift. Not a breakthrough. Not a miracle. Just an honest moment, one I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Maybe healing doesn't start with strength. Maybe it starts with being seen. The turning point by the water. There's a long stretch of waterfront in Copenhagen where everything feels slower. Boats drifting gently, bicycles humming past, seagulls arguing in the distance like dramatic background actors. I ended up there one cold afternoon, partly because I needed fresh air, and partly because my thoughts were getting too loud indoors. The wind off the water was sharp enough to wake anyone up, but it wasn't the wind that shook me. It was the realization that I'd been running. Emotionally, silently, relentlessly, I walked along the edge of the harbor, watching my reflection fade and reappear on the surface of the water with each ripple. It looked calm from far away, but up close, the movement was constant, small, restless waves shifting without pause. Felt familiar, like the inside of my chest. Calm on the outside, storms underneath. Denmark had a habit of exposing metaphors I didn't ask for as I leaned against the railing. A man around my age stood a few feet away, staring at the horizon like he was trying to decode it. We didn't speak, not even a glance at first. But there's an odd comfort in standing next to someone who also seems quietly overwhelmed by life. Eventually he smiled small, almost apologetic, and said, "It's a lot some days, isn't it?" His voice was gentle, but the truth behind it landed heavy. I didn't answer right away. My throat felt tight, and I could feel that uncomfortable burn behind my eyes. You know the one, the emotional fire alarm your body pulls when you're about to confront something real. When I finally nodded, he didn't push, didn't pry. He just added, "You don't have to carry everything alone." It wasn't advice. It wasn't wisdom. It was a simple observation, delivered in that straightforward Danish way that makes honesty feel normal instead of dramatic. And somehow that made it hit harder. For months, even years, I had been lugging around emotional weight like a stubborn traveler refusing to put down their luggage. But in that quiet moment beside a stranger in a restless sea, I felt something inside me loosen. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe the honesty, or maybe it was just time. But for the first time in a long while, I let myself breathe fully, deeply, without pretending. And the world didn't fall apart when I did. If anything, it felt a little lighter. Truth in his eyes. There's a moment when a single look can feel heavier than words. On a quiet Copenhagen street, I noticed a man on a bench, his eyes calm but sharp. When our eyes met, I saw something I had been avoiding, the truth about myself. Not judgment, not pity, just quiet acknowledgement that I froze, feeling exposed but also relieved. All my habits, the smiles to hide panic, the careful avoidance of certain streets, suddenly felt transparent. Seeing that reflected truth reminded me that facing fear doesn't destroy you. It frees you. Sometimes the hardest truth is simply noticing what we've been hiding inside. The moment I became honest. The next morning I woke up with the same gray Danish sky overhead, but something inside me had shifted. I no longer felt the need to perform calmness or hide behind smiles. The streets, the quiet cafes, even the soft hum of bicycles felt different, like they were inviting me to finally be honest with myself. I walked slowly, noticing small details. The way sunlight hit a red brick wall, the gentle lapping of water against the harbor, the laughter of children in the distance. Every simple thing reminded me that life doesn't have to be loud to be meaningful. And for the first time in years, I felt a tiny, exhilarating sense of freedom in just existing. Without pretense, I realized that honesty isn't about grand confessions. It's about small, consistent choices. Letting yourself feel, accepting the truth of your emotions, and allowing others or even strangers to witness it without fear. Denmark, with its calm streets and subtle truths, had taught me that courage can be quiet, and that quiet courage often matters the most. From that day forward, I walked differently. Not faster, not stronger, but with a kind of steady clarity that comes from facing your own reflection and saying, yes, this is me, and that's enough.